Greasy hair. Take 2 consoles into the shower. Well, fantastic. You must be a games geek.
Don't worry, you're not alone. You're watching Thumb Bandits. On this week's show, the latest games are rated, reviewed, and rubbished. We're mixing the beats with the bits with computer games and music.
And getting all misty-eyed with a look at some classic technology that revolutionised games playing.
But first, let's plug in for a quick fix of craziness with Munch's Odyssey.
You are a genius!
I always found there to be something lacking from the Oddworld series. Sure, I bought them and they looked great, but they were more eye candy to me than exciting and innovative games, and wound up gathering dust next to Space Channel 5 and Kiss Pinball. However, all is not lost. Munch's Odyssey, despite being the 3rd Oddworld game to be released, is officially the 2nd in the series. But don't worry about the maths, I'm not bothered by that nonsense in the slightest. I just want to know if this game is any good on the fat bastard of consoles, the Xbox. You can still control Abe, the grunt-loving Mudokon, desperate to hunt down eggs and save his race, but this time your main character is Munch. Both monsters have different skills and need to help each other to complete the game. Although Munch moves about on land in a wheelchair, he has fins and really comes into his own in water. On the other hand, Abe can create mind control balls that force the bad guys to do whatever you want, however fiendish. There is something strangely satisfying about taking psychic control of some ugly sod and making him throw himself into a river. In fact, that reminds me of a crazy night I once had in Windsor. But I digress, sorry. Munch is even weirder than Abe. In an horrific experiment that would make bunny-loving vivisectionist gun-down life-saving scientist, he's had an antenna attached to his head. This aerial allows Munch to take control of machinery and, after a fresh charge of zap, turns his head into a deadly weapon that any Glaswegian would be proud of. As soon as the game starts, you can tell the visuals are going to be fantastic. Once or twice, it took me a minute to realise the FMV had stopped and I was actually playing the game. Even the annoying shifts in camera angles can be excused simply because the game looks so good. Despite the Xbox controllers having been designed by a blind monkey with numb hands, it's easy enough to control both our heroes. With a simple press of a button, you can switch between the two, which becomes more and more important as the game progresses. The one massive problem with Munch's Odyssey is the repetitive gameplay. Too often it's a case of running to one place, getting something, running back, dropping it, going back again, getting something else, running back, dropping it, running back again, getting another thing, running back, dropping it, and so on. The challenges aren't really puzzles and therefore don't tax the player enough, and the teen rating on the case is a bit generous. Despite its flashy, mature looks, this is definitely a game for kids. But what the heck? I may be a man, but I've got a small boy trapped inside me who loves this kind of thing. Unfortunately, we can't find a way to remove him from my intestines, so until then, I'll have to play it for him.
Free? What are you doing? Shh! Be nice.
Once upon a time, you sat in your bedroom and decided to write yourself a computer game. After toiling away for, 3 weeks or something, you'd have finished and have a classic game on your hands.
But before the glue and the envelope to your publishers had dried, you remembered, oh, Zazish, I forgot to put music on my masterpiece. So it was back to the Spectrum to compose a little ditty, and then quick, out to catch the last post. But not anymore. Games music has hit the big time.
Since the late 90s, there have been a whole host of music stars linked to games. Everyone from the Wu-Tang Clan to Robbie Williams. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Getting the right music for a game is now incredibly important, and it's no surprise that there's a whole host of musical artists who are willing to put their art on the line.
It's important that when you're compiling a soundtrack for a game, that the music has to be in line with the culture of the game. It has to really draw the player into that whole world. You hear stories in the industry of what happened with FIDA on Gran Turismo. The game helped them to break into the Japanese territory. They started touring over there. They built up quite a big fan base.
But it was a little band called Orbital and a host of top DJs that set the trend and almost single-handedly made the PlayStation cool with their soundtrack to Wipeout. Of course, the game's music was a huge success. We met up with Orbital, who told us their secret.
We came up with a track called Petrol, but we was like trying to get all these sounds, like diesel-y sort of sounds and
nasty sort of analog synth sounds, sampling them all up, made a sort of library of sounds, if you like. And then did it a bit like sort of the old pianist or Wurlitzer player in front of the silent movie. Just watched the video and sort of found a sort of tempo that seemed to fit and just sort of started playing with these sounds over the top. If you write music for a film, you might write for a scene that's 1.5 minutes long. But if you're doing it for a game, well, if someone's stuck on that part of the game, you're writing it for 4 hours, you know, potentially. So you've got to try and sum up the sort of mood of the game. But it's got to sort of sum it up in one sort of chunk, one hit. You get that sort of kick out of thinking, God, all these people that wouldn't listen to us normally are now sort of forced to listen to us if they want to play this game.
But with quids in the bank, Orbital still aren't happy.
I wish we got involved in Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. I love the way you can change channels now, and you know, I sort of spin around, sort of listening to Flashback FM. You know, the sort of the weird sort of. It's like an amalgamation of everything you remember from middle of the road 80s rock, and it's just I just find it works with the game really well. But I'd love to have had like an Orbital channel.
But unlike old pros Orbital, Virtual Unknown's the FC All-Stars are hoping for their first kick up the charts with the help of David Beckham.
For a new band, it's just a great thing to get the exposure, it really is. It hasn't been done before, and hopefully it'll help the game as well, because the song will become a hit at the same time as the game's being launched. I think that a lot of football games don't really have amazingly passionate songs, they have just like the latest hit in the charts or a dance track, whereas this song is specifically a passionate football song. And hopefully linked in with the game, and when players score and the song comes on, it's just going to work perfectly, I think.
And with the World Cup coming up, Football is Life might be the first track written for a game to top the music chart.
Some jerk-off just pulled a piece from my ass, so I popped a cap in his goddamn mofo. Ho! We'd all like to be hard-as-nails gangsters, pulling out some huge tools and threatening people's lives just to see the fear in their eyes.
And what better way, Iain, than to exercise those demons than a good old-fashioned shoot 'em up? Tonight, we're looking at the long-gone dead in Gunfighter, the soon-to-be-dead in Police 24/7, and the undead in Resident Evil Survivor 2. First up, partner, is Gunfighter, the Legend of Jesse James on the PlayStation 1.
With 5 levels, 18 different enemies, mini-games, 4 bonus levels of sharpshooting mayhem, and the expected big bosses, this is as predictable as a Clint Eastwood catchphrase. But is Gunfighter a bullseye or bullshit?
I'm afraid the game design was really linear, predictable. You walk into a room, you shoot a bad guy, you walk into another room, you shoot a different bad guy, and so on. Didn't like it at all. It's like a poor cousin to Time Crisis.
I kind of felt like I'd played this game before, maybe when I was 15 or something, quite a while ago.
Is there anything good about it at all?
I suppose there's some nice wallpaper in the saloon, but that's about it.
The game was quite difficult.
I just noticed Paul's grown a beard.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? Well, I recommend sliding your way into a crisp blue uniform and packing some serious firepower. The big deal about this point-and-fire romp is its USB motion sensor technology, which has been working thighs in arcades across the land. You can't just sit passively through this one. No, if a bullet is approaching, please duck out of the way. But does it hit the target, or is it shooting blanks?
There's a much greater level of interaction with your own side in the game, because you've got officers moving about around you. You can use them to cover and dodge, and it's a lot of fun, and you can shoot them if you're really nasty. You don't really need quick reactions for this game because the bullets come at you slowly, but there's a good reason, because if you use a digital camera, you can dodge out the way of the camera, and that does your dodging movements for you in the game. It's all very clever.
The opponents are quite intelligent as well, a bit more intelligent than a lot of other shooter games I've played. They hide.
It reminded me of watching one of those reality TV cop shows. Everything from the camera angles to the voiceovers to the fact that if you shoot a civilian, you see it in the press the next day. It's more of a shooting sim than shoot 'em up.
Boo! I'm only joking. Next, it's Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica.
Set in the same world as Code Veronica X, but with a first-person perspective, you hotshots and attempt to blast your way past mutant freaks like zombies, the Nemesis, and Bandersnatch.
There are two modes. In arcade mode, the aim is to escape from Rockfort Island, whereas in dungeon mode, the idea is just to defeat wave after wave of the undead. And if you need a helping hand, you can opt for the partner feature. Was this game as evil as you'd hoped?
It wasn't evil at all. I mean, with a name like Resident Evil, you'd expect to be scared, but I wasn't scared at all. I've been more scared than Bob the Builder recently.
In this game, you get to choose where you want to go, which is quite nice. You're even given a map so that you can choose which door you want to go in and out of. I've played a few of the Resident Evil games, and I like the fact that you've got to keep an eye on your ammunition so you don't run out of bullets. But with this game, you've got unlimited ammo, not much of a challenge.
It's an uneasy mix of your first-person shooter and your arcade shooter. So it doesn't really have the fast action of, say, Time Crisis, and you don't have the control in like GoldenEye or Perfect Dark. It loses out on both counts.
Now, one of the problems with the Resident Evil games is the boring doors. Open the door, 20 minutes later you get through the other side. What's it like here? Tell them.
Yeah, lots of doors, sometimes even 2 doors. That's twice as boring.
Well, we've looked at the games and the decisions are in. They're not made by me, they're made by these three. I'm a poet and didn't realise I could do it. This week's third place is Gunfighter because...
It's very dated.
In second place, it's Resident Evil Survivor 2 because...
It's too easy and the load times break gameplay.
And this week's winner is Police 24/7 because...
It's sexy.
That's the best we could do, sorry. Mobile gaming on the hoof has often been equated with having a gaming snack. It's what you do to fill a bit of dead time. Our appetites were first whetted in 1976 when Mattel brought out this Auto Race, the world's first handheld electronic games machine. It was a smash. Mattel followed up its success with 2 more LED titles, Space Alert, an early Space Invaders game, and Football. This was the early 80s, the dawn of the electronic entertainment age, and we wanted our fill.
But that was just the entree, the mini chicken Kievs, the vol au vents. We were ready for the main course, and in 1980 it came in the shape of Game & Watch. Thank you. Yes, believe it or not, this is mighty Nintendo's humble beginnings in the video game industry. Game & Watch was nothing more than a win-lose test of reactions, but we went mentalist over them. And it was on these credit card-sized slabs of fun that Nintendo pushed its mascots, Mario and Donkey Kong. Nintendo released 59 machines between 1980 and 1991 and continually tinkered with the design. There were single screen, split screen, widescreen, and even 2-player versions.
Ultimately, the Game & Watch was doomed. It was expensive to make, and there were loads of cheap copies flooding the market. Plus, Nintendo was facing stiff competition from home consoles that had much better graphics. And also, they were losing money on every Game & Watch they sold. Something had to be done, and fast.
Let's do it.
And so, the Game Boy was born. The Game Boy was an instant success, due in small part to the appearance of an addictive little Russian game called Tetris, but mainly because no one had ever seen games of such quality and detail on a portable machine. With Game Boys selling by the shed-load, in 1989 you'd have had the balls the size of buffaloes to launch a new handheld. Cue Atari.
The Lynx was actually supposed to be the Pavlova of portables. It was technologically superior with its 4,096 colors, and it also catered to all tastes. Even Southpaws could have a go because you could flip the screen around. Clever. It could also be linked up for 8-way gaming action, but the software support was lousy, and it went through 6 AA batteries in 5 hours, and was bigger than a brick. Despite being the superior machine, the bargain basement bin beckoned the Lynx, and it disappeared without a trace.
14 years on, and in various guises, the Game Boy has sold over 100 million consoles and over 400 million games worldwide. That's why we say it's the foie gras, the filet mignon, the lobster thermidor of handheld consoles. Cheers!
What makes your average Joe follow blindly the insane ravings of an obvious lunatic? Is it their charisma, or is it the fact that they just want to be loved and they don't care by who? Maybe it's the fear. Who knows, but I want to find out, so I've donned my Machiavellian gloves and pulled up my warmongering trousers to enter the latest PlayStation 2 combat strategy game, Kessen 2.
Let the battle begin!
When I saw the first movies of the original Kessen, I was flabbergasted. They were gorgeous. But when it was finally released, I picked it up, played it for about 5 minutes, and tossed it aside. Well, Kessen 2 looks very much like the first one. This time, however, we're not in feudal Japan, but in Three Kingdoms era China, holding on for dear life to the tailcoats of the flailing Han dynasty. Some guy named Cao Cao has decided he'd like to be king of the hill for a while, and reigning power dude Liu Bei isn't having any of it. A big deal has been made in the press over the agent technology, which allows up to 500 soldiers on screen at any one time. Yes, it looks nice, but let's talk a little bit about gameplay. Much of the pedantic weighing up of political allies, weather changes, and logistical elements has been reduced to between-battle, choose-your-own-adventure-like cutscenes, where you're offered 3 tactical options and you get to decide between them. So, do you want to train your troops, give some money for land development, or use some magic to bomb the frick out of the other side? Ooh, magic! Yes, there is a Final Fantasy element to this combat strategy game. Throwing in the fantastical is, after all, what these interactive entertainments are all about, aren't they? Yes. Well, hail hail KOEI for adding something extra to make Kessen 2 that little bit more interesting. But not by much. Magicians now adorn your side in battle, and each has a number of special elemental power-ups that shower wrath down upon the enemy. Basically, Kessen 2 is like one of those irritating interactive movies where you occasionally get your say in the proceedings, but more often than not, you're just at the whim of some higher electronic power.
Take a lot more than that to stop Xiao Yu.
You can prepare yourselves for the launch of Kessen 2 on the PlayStation 2 later on in the year.
Now, if you're anything like me, you'll treat gaming very, very seriously indeed. I know all about you. I've looked at the forum. I know you're more than happy to spend twice the amount of cash on an imported console months before it hits our shores. You'll spend hours trawling websites looking for cuddly parappa toys, and you'll spend days downloading games and music from the net. But some people are even more fanatical than us. We spoke to Tony Ryder, rare games importer and collector extraordinaire, about obtaining the unobtainables.
The most desirable games definitely tend to come from Japan, especially from companies like Konami, Treasure and Capcom. Anything connected to them companies tends to be very collectible. A lot of them games just get released in Japan only. The games on the PC Engine that tend to be really collectible are things like Castlevania. That tends to go for around £100 retail. Splatterhouse, I personally don't think looks that dated now, even considering it's 12, 13 years old. All the Gunhead series are very collectible. Some other really interesting things on that machine is the Caravan titles. They were released in Japan for Japanese trade shows only. This is really, really rare. And the interesting thing about these games, there was 4 or 5 in the series, is they only actually last for 2 minutes, which works out very expensive. Something like £2.80 per second per gameplay. I think this is the only one we've ever had in 12, 13 years.
But what does Tony think will be valuable in the future?
I think the Sega Dreamcast, again, definitely the Japanese games might be something to look out for the future. Now that the Sega Dreamcast is discontinued, I think 2 or 3 years down the line, again, you might find a lot of the shoot-em-ups on that machine are going to be possibly worth some money. The Biohazard 5th anniversary metal suitcase, this is a real metal suitcase, is a prime example of the stuff you get from Japan. You just don't get this kind of thing in Europe. Certainly the most expensive game for the collectors are the Neo Geo home cartridges, no doubt about it. And the Metal Slug easy sells for £1,000. In fact, I think one went on eBay a few months ago for £1,200. And the Kasumi Encounter American version, if that ever does come up, you'll be looking at nearly £2,000 for that. There's only supposed to be 3 of them in the world.
Man, I think I sold that cartridge to Lionel Richie at a car boot sale for 25 pence. Oh! But if you do have a copy of US Kazuna Encounter, then please let Tony know. It's the only thing that will restore dryness to his mouth and stop that rather scary tick he's got.
Go on, sod off! There's no hilarious comedy bit tacked onto the end of this week's show.
Nope, we're spent. Besides, it takes a lot out of ourselves to come up with such fantastic entertainment every single week.
That's very true, Alex. But one thing we can do for you is give you the chance to win a PS2 and a copy of Metal Gear Solid 2. Simply call 0900 10 240 and answer a simple question. But the lines are only open for 24 hours!
Well, in the meantime, you can also check out our website at www.channel4.com/Thumb Bandits. You're buying, boy.
Fucking bastards.
So, oh, God, sorry.
Because you could flip the screen around. Clever. Oh, little tie boy.
Cut.
Right, we're not doing that again. I can't work in these conditions.